We have a 2-part exciting episode coming up with a self-mastery coach, a father, an athlete, a motivational speaker, and the author of 10 books. We're honored to have Sylvester McNutt for today's episode and next week's episode to discuss belonging and letting go, something that is so inviting and scary for so many of us. Sylvester has written 10 books, and he's now coming out with his latest, Live the Life You Deserve, How to Let Go of What No Longer Serves You and Embody Your Highest Self. Sounds enticing, and for a reason. I'm really, really excited for this 2-part episode. Let's get into it today. A lot to learn here today, folks. Friends, listeners, we're excited to have Sylvester McNutt on today's episode. Just met Sylvester through a mutual friend that you heard me talk about quite a bit, Pip Davidson. And Pip was telling me, you have to meet this guy. You got to meet him. He is so uplifting, so inspiring, gets people motivated, and really gets to the heart of what can create like barriers for ourselves, and really, like, to be kind of cliche about it, like reaching our highest potential or stepping into our higher selves, or all the different ways that we might envision just living a life that that feels richer, right? And I went to your Instagram and I was like, oh, it didn't take me long, a couple of reels before I was like, okay, I get it. I see why I needed to meet you. And I'm so glad so honored that you agreed to come on the show and talk with us today about your new book, actually, that's coming out called Live the Life You Deserve, How to Let Go of What No Longer Serves You and Embodies Your Highest Self. And I love the title, Live the Life You Deserve. Not the life you want, not the life you need, the life you deserve. And that's such a nuanced but important difference. And so I'm just curious to hear, as we talk about our topic today, belonging and letting go, letting go can mean so many things to different people. I'm curious to hear more about this topic from you and what that actually even means. But first of all, welcome to the show, Sylvester, and thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. I just got back into, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and just got back last night. I was in Amsterdam for the last few weeks, and I was doing a deep dive working with one of my clients. Been working with people for like close to 15 years now. And one of the things that we talked about was this theme of letting go. And when you enter this space of personal development work, I have a few starting points. So the major starting point that people start with is, something is wrong with me, I need to get better. Something is wrong with me, I need to fix. Something is wrong with me, I am defective. Therefore, I am taking this course or listening to this podcast or reading this book or getting this coach or this therapist because something is wrong with me, I am defective. And so what I try to pinpoint with people is that, how you start something, how you initiate and engage something just mentally, like the mindset of it, has a lot to do with the outcome and the process. And so the client I was working with, we're talking about letting go of specific habits. So for him, it was being a Mr. Nice Guy. So essentially having low boundaries, being a people pleaser, going out of your way, trying to seek approval, and not having your voice, not having your autonomy to speak authentically, to be honest, to be present. And so what we've been working on is letting go of this identity of the Mr. Nice Guy, because the consequences of this identity have him showing up to spaces outside of his professional life, and he's not fully himself. And what we uncovered, he's a lawyer. What we uncovered in our work is that when he's a lawyer, he does show up. Well, he's not a Mr. Nice Guy. He's kind of a bully. He's a boss, and he's a successful lawyer, and he's assertive, which these are skill sets you need to be a lawyer. You can't be a Mr. Nice Guy or Mr. Nice Girl and be a lawyer. You need to speak clearly and tactfully. You need to communicate. and you also need to be persuasive. But then when it comes to his regular life with his friends and family, and as a parent, he turns into this like mushy gushy Mr. Nice Guy pushover, and there's been some extreme consequences for that. So when we talk about letting go, there's so many places you can start from. So the first two places we wanted to start from was, one, what is the mindset here? Like, are you approaching this as if something is wrong with you, you're defective, right? And then two, like, how deep in the well do we need to go into your story? Because this is a part of your story. And so it's occurred somewhere, right? Somewhere where you've learned this identity of, I need to be a Mr. Nice Guy. And so we went deep. We found the root in his childhood and in his family system. So we found the root, the family system, and then we found the mindset. And the mindset wasn't, you need to become a new person. It was, you just need to be a better version of you, the best version of you. And so when we located what mindset we wanted, and when we located like where this came from, then from there, it just brought us to the present. Because at this point, you can have, most people listening to this podcast are going to be more mature, right? And the consequence of being more mature is that you have more story, you have more pages in your book. Now, that can work in your favor, or it can work against you. Most of the times it works against people because they have this story built up. I'm not good enough at this. I failed this test. That girl didn't like me. I got dumped here. I went broke here. I got fired from this job here. My mama hates me. My grandmother hates me. Tacos hate me. It's like we develop this story of all these things that can potentially work against us. So with my client, we had to go deep into, his story. Like, where did you learn this story? And like, where was it reinforced? And the first step, and I don't want to put it like a bullet point type of thing. But that was like the groundwork. That was the initiation. That's how we initiated. All right. So once we kind of crossed that threshold of like, all right, well, how do we begin to work with this? We identified where it came from. We identified like what that story sounded like. I had him talk it out. The actual Mr. Nice Guy. Like, why do you believe you have to be a nice guy? Like, why do you believe you have to have this identity? Right. I asked him, like, explain it to me. Like, why do you have this identity? Like, why? Where is it coming from? And he went deep. He explained it. He explained the whole thing. Well, it's this. And for all of us, all of our stories, it's nuance. Like, it's nuanced the way that you are, the way that you are. It's a nuanced thing. It's not a black and white. It's a very colorful thing. Because of something that happened to you or did not happen to you when you were 13, that made some impact on your life. When you were 19, that made some impact on your life when you were 24. So now when you're listening to this at the age of 36, you're like, yes, this is why I am the way that I am. And so the first thing I ask you to offer yourself on this concept of letting go is compassion. Mm-hmm. Because what is compassion? Compassion is a format of love. Compassion is a format of acceptance. And when you have love and acceptance, you have pretty much all the power you need to make any mental shift you want with love and acceptance. Because with love and acceptance, you see things for exactly as they are, and you're able to pull back. So I ask you to have compassion for yourself. No matter where you are, no matter what you're looking to let go of or looking to release. If it's an addiction, if it's a mindset, if it's an identity, if it's a small behavior, if it's a habit, having some compassion for yourself for where you are. Now, what that does is that brings you to the present moment. Because the suffering that so much that we experience is often in our past, it's in our stories, and it's in reliving those stories. It's in the grief of those stories. Or it's in the reimagining those stories, but then you're not living in reality. So the big thing is to always come present. Be in the present. Be in the now. You've been a Mr. Nice Guy or Mr. Nice Girl. You haven't had boundaries. You've been a people pleaser. You've been a pushover for 20 years. Being sad, upset, angry, disappointed today will not help you. It will not serve you. Yes, feel those emotions, process those emotions, integrate those emotions, but come up to the mainframe here and get clear on, okay, what do I want today? What do I want today? If you want to go into the future, fine. What do I want in a week? What do I want to, whatever. If you want to go there, fine. But today, do you have to be the pushover today? Do you have to be the Mr. Nice Guy today? Do you have to be like the insecure version of you today? Do you have to be the weak version of you today? Like, if you're identifying these things, like I have these things about me I don't like. Okay, do you have to be that today? Like, truly ask yourself that. Oh, I'm a terrible friend because I'm so overwhelmed. I can never text people back and call them back. Okay. I understand being overwhelmed. Do you have to be that today? Can you bring some clarity? Can you bring some structure? Can you be the friend that reaches out and makes a to-do list? I'm going to call back Tanya. I'm going to text Jason. I'm going to email Mona. Like, you get to decide. That's the beautiful thing about life is when we're talking about letting go is the empowerment of the moment of knowing, hey, I get to decide today. I get to decide today. I've struggled with boundaries my whole life. I'm a people pleaser. Okay, you get to decide today to have boundaries, to have respect for yourself, to move different, to operate different, to interact with people differently, to respond differently, right? And the thing with my client that I always teach all my clients and everyone listening is I'm a former athlete. I'm an athlete still, but at one point I was on teams. All right, I did track, I did football. And one of the things you learn in athletics is that you're in the game a little bit and you're in practice a lot. And in life, you have to remember that every day out here is a day to practice. It's a day to get more repetitions. And the way you practice and what you practice, that determines how you show up to the game. And so if you practice, okay, for the next, we're doing this interview on a Monday. So if you hear this on a Monday, all right, let's just start at the top of the week. I like to have a clean slate. All right, Monday for me is the best day of the week. Sundays and Mondays are like my favorite days. If you start the Monday off, all right, and you're like, all right, cool. This week, I got to get my 10,000 steps. I need to eat good. I need to be in bed by 9 p.m. Let's just keep it simple, okay? Historically, over the last 2 weeks, you don't sleep, you don't eat good. You're up, we're watching Netflix, Love is Blind. You're watching whatever you're watching, all right? But this week, you're like, no, I am the type of person who goes to bed. You're literally letting go of your old identity from last week just by having that demarcation that starts this Monday and having that mindset and that clarity. Okay, this Monday I'm going to bed, I'm getting my wellness in, and I'm eating well. And you draw that line in the sand, like I called it, a demarcation. And that's how we heal. That's how we take back that power. It's always in the present. Like, you can't do anything about last week because you stayed up late. Your kids were bothering you, and so you stayed up late. Cool. Make peace with it. Have compassion for that version of you. Now this version of you gets to live embodied, gets to live in power in the moment. All right, this week, this is what I'm doing.
Here's what I get, Sylvester, from what you're saying is that we have these false narratives about ourselves that are rooted in, whatever initiated it. Some oftentimes childhood experience, right? And so we adopt these narratives as part of our identities. I'm the Mr. Nice Guy. I'm the person who was abandoned by her mom. I was the person who, was isolated as a child. I'm the one that never gets the job. These are the stories that we have. And it might be rooted in something that did actually happen to you. It's not to invalidate those experiences. But what happens is that when we adopt those as a permanent part of who we are, then we are not allowing ourselves the gift of change, which is going to happen anyway, right? But we're not allowing ourselves the luxury of evolving, of becoming a different person from day to day to day to day to day, which, by the way, is happening anyway, but we're not honoring that space. We're not allowing that. And so we're allowing some past experience to sit in the driver's seat and really dictate the course of our lives. And we're just sitting back without a seatbelt on, no airbags, no protection, and no wonder we're so scared about what the future holds or even this present moment, right? And also, the great irony from what I'm hearing from you is that, and tell me if this is a stretch, but the great irony is that we also find security in these stories. And so it's like, we're scared to let go of it because we don't know who we're going to be. And I think what seems to be missing from what you're saying is choice, is making the choice. Like, oh, wait a second. And we don't even realize we have a choice because we've let this false narrative sit in the driver's seat and dictate how our life is going to run. And again, the course of our lives. So when we say, wait a second, I can just say, hey, it's my turn to drive now. Like you helped me out for a minute, right? and it's my turn to drive now. I get to decide what's next for me. Now, that doesn't mean that you can say, hey, I'm going to be the next, Meryl Streep, or I'm going to be the next Beyonce or whatever, or NFL player. Maybe you can, okay? But maybe that's not in the cards for you. But what you can dictate is the energy with which you're going to show up and the choices that you're going to make right now in this moment.
Oh, yeah. And to me, there is an unlimited potential in what you can do. And it's whoever we could name, Beyonce, Meryl Streep, none of those people should even be the barometer for what's possible for you.
That's right. That's right.
Chapter 11 in my book is called "It's Possible," right? Yeah. And so I wouldn't even make another person's success my target. I think it's disrespectful to make what another person's done like, oh, that I want to do that. People say that to me all the time. They're like, oh, I want to write a book like you. Why would you want to do that? Be better than me. Be the best you. Yeah. It's like the only person, honestly, the only person who should aspire to be like me is my son. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like that for all of us, like we shouldn't aspire to be like anybody. And it's like, it's good to have certain examples modeled for us. Like I remember when I was a kid and I wanted to play in the NFL, I remember my favorite NFL football players like, oh, I want to do it like him. I want to do it like him. But like the evolution of your goals, your dreams, your vision for yourself is you recognize your potential, the unlimited potential that's inside of you. And once you recognize that, the dreams just they give you so much energy. Yeah. You're like, oh man, I can do this. I can be signed to Hay House, right? I remember 10 years ago when I was working at, this would have been 11 years ago. I was working at Verizon. I was doing sales management at the time. And there was this author, Esther and Jerry Hicks. They're signed to Hay House. Yeah. It's the same company I'm signed to. And they had this book called The Law of Attraction. It's one of my favorite books. It was an audio book. And one of the things that happened in there is she was saying how when she got to Phoenix, Arizona, she got some codes or she got some signals that like let her see the potential of what was possible. And I had just relocated to Phoenix, Arizona as I was listening to this book. I'm from Chicago originally. I just relocated to Phoenix. And also I found this, I believe they call it a synchronicity between the fact that I was in Phoenix, Arizona, listening to this book called The Law of Attraction. And the author said, hey, I went and found myself in Phoenix, Arizona, and I found my path in Phoenix, Arizona. That was the reason I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, because of all the trauma and pain that I experienced in Chicago. I felt like, a lot of the times with our wounds, if you stay in the environment where your wound is caused, sometimes you can never heal. And sometimes you stay sick forever because you stay in the wound or you stay in the environment that's causing your suffering. And so I moved to Phoenix, Arizona to get out of the environment that was causing my suffering so I could create a new person, a new me. And when I found this book, I found that the authors had a very similar path to me, that they were, finding themselves. And I remember saying to myself as I'm reading this book, and I have no books published at the time, right? I know that I'm a writer. I know that I want to be an author, but at this moment, that's not what had happened for me. And I remember listening to this book and I said to myself, okay, cool. If Hay House publishes authors like this, who write like this, who have this type of energy, who have this type of intention, this is the exact type of work that I am about to do, that I've been doing secretly my whole life. I've been developing myself for this. I said to myself at that moment, I said, all right, cool. I got to be signed to Hay House then. And I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't even know how that was possible. I didn't even know if it was possible for me, but I felt it was possible for me. My conviction in that moment was that my only option was, yes, okay, I'm going to be signed to Hay House. I've published 10 books and I am signed to Hay House. Now, when that moment happened, for me, it was a switch where this is what's like, all right, when I had this vision, it was like, all right, this is the vision. And so for anybody listening, when you get these visions, when you get these ideas, when you get these dreams about what you want to do, what's possible, And they don't have to be business related. It could be travel related. It could be fun related. It could be relationship related. It could be self related. It could be you and your relationship with God. Whatever it is, when you get these visions, I have this rule I live by. I have this phrase I live by. It's called honor the gifts. When you get a vision, that's a gift, and you have to honor the gifts that come to you. So I dedicated the next 10 to 14 years, about roughly, to this journey, to writing these books, to learning, this language, to developing a whole framework for my courses and for my books, to serve people, to help people, to impact people. And then Hay House comes and they're like, hey, we see you're doing some great work. We want to develop a relationship with you. And when they sent me that email, I think it was like 2008, maybe 4 or 5 years after I had the initial thought of I want to be signed to Hay House. And when they sent me that email, I'm like, of course you want to work with me, because I've been wanting to work with you. You put the signal, I put the signal out before you even knew who I was. I put the signal out energetically into the universe that we're going to have a relationship. And it took you about 5 or 6 years to find me. And then you found me. And then it took us another like 2 years of actually building our relationship before we actually had a project signed. And then we've done 2 books together. And so that's why chapter 11 in my book is titled It's Possible, to remind people that as you're letting go, because here's the thing that we do, and you named this, because we can be so scared, but we have something familiar. Well, even though we're afraid of moving forward, we'll hold on to what's familiar. Okay.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about this, like, and if you're watching on video, you can see me holding on. I'm holding on to a bar right now, right? Now, imagine that life is always in movement, even though there's moments of stillness, right? It's usually stillness, moving forward or moving backwards, if we're thinking about this on a very basic level, all right? So just roll with the analogy. So if I'm on, like, let's say the monkey bars, and I have my 2 hands like this, right? Well, I'm practicing stillness, and I'm just holding myself here, right? And you can, this is life sometimes. Sometimes you're just in the same place. You're just holding yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you want to go backwards on the monkey bars, it's very hard. It's like reaching behind you is actually like very hard to do. And that's life. Like going backwards, it's hard to do. It's hard to go backwards. But if you want to go forward, you literally have to let go of the rung that you're on to reach for the one in front of you. And there's a moment in time where you actually don't know if you're going to grab that bar in front of you. You actually don't know if you have enough momentum.
Yeah.
But what happens over time, and like we were talking about practice, repetition, what happens over time is if you continue to practice moving forward, eventually you go through the monkey bars like this and you develop that rhythm and that cadence to just keep going forward. Mm-hmm. So for anyone who maybe you feel stuck, like you're just holding the 2, consciously think about that image, the image of you moving forward and what it requires. And it requires you, I could hold on to some, but I have to have a hand free. I have to have a hand free to come forward. And that is the only way we can get that momentum. Yeah. And so as you're dealing with, okay, I want to let go of this, I'm struggling with this. Okay, there's a piece of you that will stay rooted in that fear of that moment, of the certainty of what is, the pattern of what is, even if the pattern of what is not good for you or not ideal or not optimal. There's a part of you that wants to hold on to that because that you've been in that. Of course, stay there, sure. And duality is allow at least one hand to go reach for something else. Just allow it.
What do you think keeps people from doing that? What do you think the fear is? Because I see the fear, one part of the fear, as being isolation. Being a belonging researcher, I tend to see the world through that lens of connection and isolation. And I tend to think we can occupy both at the same time in certain spaces on different levels, but that's another day. Having said that, I wonder if a lot of the fear is that people are concerned about letting go of a relationship, letting go of a certain job, letting go of a certain identity, right? Whether it's very internal and in their interior world or very external things that are going on, or relationships or spaces that they occupy, that there's that fear of letting go of it. Like the implications of that can feel super scary and unsafe in many ways. how does someone reconcile that?
I think really what you have to ask yourself is, well, what do I want?
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, you have to really rewire your programming. And so you have
Yeah.
to ask yourself, like, what do I want? Because we
Yeah.
could go look at everybody's story. It could be capitalism. It could be your family system. It could be your experience and your conditioning. It
Mm-hmm.
could be your mindset. And so the big question is, what do you want? What do you actually want? Because as you get more clear on what you want for your life, then it gets the work of recognizing what you need to overcome or what you need to release is easy work.
Yeah.
I grew up with alcoholic parents. I should be an alcoholic parent. That's usually what happens. I'm not an alcoholic parent. I grew up with parents who believed that physical abuse was okay and that it was a necessary part of discipline. I don't physically abuse my kids because I don't believe that. I believe that I can communicate. I believe that I'm a master of communication. And so, I'm not perfect, but I believe that I can communicate with my kid, make an impact. The whole like discipline your kid, you can do that through communication. I grew up with some generational curses that could have easily been passed. I grew up, we had food stamps. There was times we had food stamps because we didn't have enough money. We currently don't, the family I'm in right now, we don't have that situation. So ultimately a lot of the times things continue because of the family system we grew up in. But to me, it's like, all right, I get it. We all get that. We
Yeah.
get that a lot of things coded in our DNA, hereditary, can just pass to us through us.
Yeah.
But the big question is like, well, what do you want though?
And what do you deserve? Right?
Exactly.
Back to your title.
Exactly.
What do you deserve? We have to, here's what I've noticed too, Sylvester, is that, especially here in Western culture, is that there is this entitlement to comfort. And if we're not willing to have at least momentary spaces of discomfort and momentary experiences of discomfort, whether it's that, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that next rung, right? Then we're not going to move. We're going to stay still, holding on, like you said, or either fighting to go backwards even sometimes, because at least that's familiar, like you said earlier. So that discomfort I find to be a huge barrier for folks, that avoidance of it. And, I don't believe necessarily in the no pain, no gain. I'm not saying it has to be painful, but the brain, from a chemical standpoint, likes certainty. And that is because it likes to be alive, and so it wants to know this is going to keep me alive. And on some very, we'll say almost like an archaic level, it's like the brain tells us, don't move forward, don't let go, because we don't know what's going to happen. And yet, at the same time, it's an incredibly creative structure in our bodies that wants new, that wants exciting, that wants to be challenged, and you're not going to be challenged in the same space, not new challenges, at least, over and over and over again. And so, I know for me personally, staying stagnant is abhorrent. It just, and so a lot of this is personality stuff too. I find staying stagnant to be quite scary, because I'm like, oh shit, nothing's going to change. I'm just going to stay in the same energy. And for those of us who have this, we're tapped into that thought, that feeling, that vision that's placed on our spirit, like what you were talking about earlier, which I think is most of us. We can have these kind of mixed emotions of, I'm scared to move forward, but also I'm so scared if I don't let go and move forward. And I think for some folks too, it's also, Sylvester, but what do I even need to let go of to move to that next rung? I'm not even sure what I need to let go of in my life. So how do folks identify that? How do they identify what it is that's holding them back?
Deep listening and honoring your intuition.
Yeah.
There was a moment in my life where I was in a job that I didn't like. I was dating a person I didn't like. I was living in a city and state that I didn't like. And what happened is the system that I was running, like, you got to look at yourself as like an operating system. It's like the operating system of me needed to be updated, right? For all of you who have cell phones, you get an update on your phone every few months. Every few months, there's a new operating system that comes out.
Yeah.
And sometimes after a certain amount of operating systems, you got to get new hardware. Like, you have to get a whole new device, right? And it's like, look, I look at myself as the same way. The operating system that I had become outdated. Like, data needed an update. The money situation needed an update. My zip code needed an update. And so what did I do? I was like everybody else. I was scared. Well, I can't move from here. My whole life is here. I can't get a better job than this. This is the most I've ever made. I'll never get another woman like her. She's the best I've ever known. Like we tell ourselves these stories, right?
We're so limited. And like, there's this sense of scarcity. Like, there's not
it's so
enough,
small.
right?
Like, you're thinking so small.
Yeah.
Like, this is the most I've ever made. So then you think, I can't make more than this.
Right.
It's like, oh, this relationship sucks, but I can't leave her because she's the best. She's the most beautiful I've ever. Like, what?
Right.
Like, listen to yourself.
No more beautiful women. No more great women. Just
like,
this
is
one.
the only beautiful woman. This is the only job that can pay you. This is the only city you can live in. It's called limited thinking. Limited thinking.
Yeah.
And so then the big question is, like, what do you want? Now, if you're only thinking in your limited way, well, you're going to get the same results. But if you just give yourself permission for like 10 minutes just to dream in an unlimited manner, unlimited, like, what does it mean? Okay, I'm waking up. I don't like my job. I don't like who I'm dating. I don't like where I live. What does it mean to dream
Let's be real.
Unlimited?
Let's be
unlimited.
honest, right? Yeah.
And then you start to answer, well, it's like, well, I guess I don't have to live here. I mean, I do like her, but maybe there's somebody I'm more compatible with. It's like, yeah, I do have security at this job, but maybe there's another move I can make. Maybe I stay with my company and find a lateral move, or maybe I change teams. Maybe I completely change careers.
Yeah.
And here's what happens. When I actually experienced that, I gave myself grace and gave myself some time, but I started making moves, started moving the career around, let go of that relationship because it was out of alignment with me. We didn't match. And yeah, there was grief there. And that's the thing to also remember, like, this process of letting go, there's going to be grief. There's going to be grief, right? And so we have to integrate and make space and acknowledge the grief. There will be grief because it's loss. Becoming the best version of yourself, tapping into whatever that means for you, means that there's still loss too. Yes, you're creating and you're building and you're manifesting and you're living in alignment, and there's still loss. In order for me to be the best self that I could be, I had to let go of the best job I ever had. I had to let go of a woman that I actually loved, but she wasn't in alignment with me, and I wasn't in alignment with her. Truthfully.
Right. Yeah.
Now
but you have to start telling yourself the truth, is what I'm hearing.
You got to be honest. You have to be
honest with yourself. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. All of the show notes and links can be found on my website at drmonanour.com. That's DRMONANOUR.com. Throughout most episodes, you'll hear me referring to the belonging model that I developed, which is represented by a belonging life map that helps you explore areas in your life where you feel more connection and areas where you might feel more isolation. And you can get a free copy of your own belonging life map on my website. Again, that's drmonanour.com. If you like the Belonging Reimagined podcast, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review. That can help more folks find us and keep more episodes coming. Until next time, I'm Dr. Mona. You're right where you belong.